Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Heat Override, and I'm ready to bring the pain for you this week. It's almost Christmas time. I couldn't think of a better way to make it kick time. So say what up to my guest, Thomas Kickman. Kick. What's up, dude? How you doing?
I'm doing really good, Heat. I'm really glad to enjoy this time with you.
Yeah. It's been we've known each other for a long time. So
10 years.
10 years, 10 years. It doesn't seem like it's been that long since I would call in on the radio and things.
Well, Doc started. But the Fantasy Sports Channel on XM's been there for 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of started hooking up knowing of each other when Doc was on, did his radio show, and then the nighttime you were on all the time. And I would just, we just all of a sudden we've all become really good friends. It's kind of crazy how it's all evolved, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, that's what that's like one podcast I want to do with like if we could get other people in, that would be great. But if we can't, it's always been about like fantasy sports, the evolution, but the evolution of the last 10 years of how like 30 points in a hockey championship, like a millionaire maker would win you everything, but now 30 points is like one player.
Yeah, exactly.
It's insane.
So no, and
go on.
Hockey, that's how I kind of got in on the scene, is kind of weaseling my way in on the hockey because there was nobody that did hockey. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to be the hockey guy. So it worked out for a while. And, that's a lot of work to do the daily thing every single day. I mean, I was putting in hours and hours of work just to write up, a little article. You know how it is, Heat. It's just, but it was a lot of fun, but a lot of work.
You bring up the writing the articles and things. So I mostly only do that for really football, but that takes time in its own self. So I've went through so many iterations, writing it down, then putting it on there, then putting it on there. Then I did audio, then I did video, then I went back to audio. And it's like sometimes I just feel people disconnect unless it's like a podcast, they'll watch it. But if, they're looking for content, they just want to read it and get through it real quick.
Right.
So, for me, that's kind of what I do now.
That was my thing. And I knew people wanted to read it real quick because sometimes you don't got time when you're setting lineups to sit and read 10 different opinions. You're just like, dude, just give me the guys that I should play and a little reason why. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to make sure I had the best guys for everybody to play. And we were pretty successful for a while.
Yeah. I mean, one guy I lost contact with, I don't know if you did, was Cappy. Like
you know what? I don't know what's happened to Cappy. I text him on Twitter every couple months, and I have not gotten a response from him for a couple years. The last I knew, he was sick.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was cancer or something like that, but since then I have not heard a word from Cappy. And I kind of gave him his little start. Him and I were kind of the hockey guys, and he was so ambitious. It was just crazy. I mean, I couldn't keep up with him. I didn't have the time to do what he did.
Yeah.
Or, he was doing most of that stuff all for free. I mean, he wasn't making any money off that kind of stuff, which, that's my biggest thing. I was like, damn, I'm doing all this work and I'm really not making that much money. So it's like, do you want to still, I wouldn't say waste my time, but, do all this research for others? It was kind of crazy. But Happy, I don't know whatever happened to him.
Yeah. I mean, you're right about the sick thing. I thought I heard it was cancer. He might have told me it was cancer. I can't remember because those text messages and things are just so long deleted by now. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but maybe one day he'll service up. Maybe he just had a long fight, he had to do and just, had to get back on his feet and then get that smile back or whatever. I don't know. But if you're out there, Cappy, hit us up, brother.
Hit us. Please.
Right. That's the crew. So I mean, but that you're right. When you talk about that little crew we had right there, and then when we were all in that, I mean, I don't know if it was collusion at that point. I've always thought about that when we would be in our little chat and we would be all posting different lineups and things like that. But I think for the most part, we talked about it, but in the end, most of us played our own lineups.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Always.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we did. I mean, that's why we do it. Yeah. We're not out there,
like you said,
That's
they'll
why
make
we do it.
money, you know.
Yep.
And you got to think about that the baseball people too. Like it is monotonous that every day you have to write this amount of information for every player. And if you're not making a lot of money, I mean, maybe you spend the money to do it and then you eventually it pays off, like kind of what would happen with Tommy G. But at the same time, it
Yep.
doesn't always work out like that.
No, all it takes is one bad player in a lineup and you're toast.
Yeah, yeah, that's all it takes. And that's why for the most part, for all the years, I've just given my stuff out for free because it slows it down for me, and then in slowing it down for me, it allows me to actually, just go, well, I might as well just put it on the internet, whatever, help people, and I have. So now it's kind of just like I include it as part of my Patreon for my podcast, pretty much. So
Yep. Yep. No, it's good. I would love to do a podcast like this myself all the time, but I don't have the smarts to do it. Maybe, I mean, look at how long it took us to hook up here.
Well, look how long I mean, we got it together, but I think that's just more now next time I can just go click your name and you'll be right in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's
So
awesome.
I think that's really how that works now. But also you are right too with people's schedules and things. And then I was like, I just thought I was gonna go up to the mall and just be like pop, 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 pop. I'm wearing a mask. I don't give a crap. I'm just like just grab stuff and go, right? No, that's not how it went. I got to the one store, man. There were like 20 people in line just to get in the store. And I was like, damn, really? And then I looked, it said 54 people. And I'm looking inside. I'm like, that don't look like no 54 people. What's going on, man? Let's let us in. Let's let us in. So those are just things that, right now that
Yes.
it kind of the things changed in a way, you know.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's I mean we could talk a little bit about it, but we don't have to because I wanted to talk more about hockey and with the season coming up and things like that. But dude, yeah, just for a second, that freaking the just how like going to that store and having to get in that line, it's like, well, I got to do it because if I don't do it now, I got to do it then, you know.
Yeah. And unless you're going to shop online, and obviously you're not a guy that wants to shop online. You want to go feel, touch, and smell whatever you're getting, right?
Yeah, yeah, man. I'm trying to invite it in. It's like, come get me. You can't get me. I'm just.
Yeah. Well, it got my family here. We've all been recovering, but
Yeah.
it's been pretty gentle thing.
Yeah.
Hard, but she's hanging in there,
Hmm.
and the kids have had it just this last week or so. So it's we've been laying low and just
Yeah.
getting better. It's all you can do, and yeah.
That's all I can do. Yeah, it's and I like last year I was talking to Rob from Elite Fantasy, and he
Yep.
was gonna set me up right before WrestleMania with Jeff Mans. So we were going to do a wrestling podcast. They were going to have me on and everything, and then Rob got it apparently or something because that's what Jeff said on one of his podcasts. He was like, Rob ended up getting it, and I was like, that makes sense because like he was texting and talking with me all the way up until that point, and it was like, phew. And then WrestleMania passed, and Jeff's now in football mode. There's no way I'm getting a hold of Jeff right now unless I talk
Yep.
football.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I mean, and that's just right there. I mean, even to be in the consideration to even have a chance to do something like that is not only an honor, it's just kind of cool too.
Well, you're like me. That's the same. A lot of the stuff that Doc and I did when I was doing hockey, he'd always like to do it kind of organically. He would tell me, Tom, just call in. We'll put you at the front of the line,
Yep.
And so we
Mm-hmm.
did a lot of it organically, and it worked out really well. I thought,
Yeah.
try to be kind of entertaining and give out some good content.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's where I think like with the late nights with me and Chrissy Ray kind of just lost itself because it was more so as after all the years with Doc and being with him and learning, my own style when it comes to DFS, and applying my seasonal fantasy strategies to that, I eventually became my own. I have my own methods that works and it works for me. So when I would call in, it would just be chaos and melee and 60 seconds of heat override, which is where this all kind of came from.
That's where you started your craft. I mean, you got to have a shtick. You got to be different. You can't be like everybody else. And he'd override. You always brought the pain, and you knew you were going to get. I can remember one of the first times Tommy G was around, and I can remember you called in, and you probably didn't hear this in the back, but I could hear Doc and those two talking. And Doc's going to Tommy, goes, we just got to let him go, and just letting you go on your rant for a little bit because Tommy was trying to cut in, and it was like, no, you don't cut in when he calls. Just let him talk. He'll get his stuff over, and then he's out.
yeah, most of the time. And then there was the other times that I would be like, well, hold on, I do have some good plays, or it would just
exactly.
But I'll never forget the times that I broke the radio. Like I literally broke.
Oh yeah, it was good. I always enjoyed it.
It was good, and during those times, again, it started what I felt like everybody went their own ways, their evolution, and then we seen all these points go up on like FanDuel and DraftKings.
Oh yeah, that just used to drive me nuts. That was just, like you said, 30 points is nothing. 30 points would be enough to win you the thing. And I don't know why people sometimes always get more infatuated when there's more points scored.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And the one thing I always didn't like about the hockey thing that they've changed is they used to have the plus minus in there, and that was kind of my little secret to everything, because nobody knew what plus minus. They didn't understand it.
You're right.
And so if it, you got the minus, my God, you got all the points subtracted. It was kind of funny. One night I was so close to winning one of the things, and I was in the lead, and it looked like I was gonna win, and because the guy that I needed to score the goal scored the goal, his whole line scored. I was in first, and then all of a sudden it readjusts, and the one guy that beat me had the goalie to win too. So I didn't have the goalie, and I ended up losing like an eighth of a point on my $10,000 win and a chance to win. And I was so devastated. That was just a brutal night. I've never won one of the big ones. I've done a lot, but I won $1,000, and I was like, well, that was great. But it was like 10 grand and a chance to get in one of the finals.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know what
it was.
I think for us, it's like we kind of just do it for the fun, the competition, and kind of like do it. Where like the other guys, they play those huge. Like for me, I'm not going to spend more than like $50 or $100 on a week. I'm not going to do that.
No, not even.
So I'm not going to put $100 lineup in, $100 lineup in, $100 lineup in it. And most of the lineups that we have, because when you get into other contests that are higher, the payouts or the pay line's lower. But we just don't do it because we do things already for our lives that already we're comfortable with.
Exactly. And I just do, I'm a $5-10 kind of guy when it comes to lineups. It's a $5, just a little, it's not big, but and if you might get lucky to win, you might win more than $100. So it's like, it's just kind of the competition and just seeing if I'm still if I still have it and I'm still on the same wavelength.
Yeah. That's really good. And you know what? For the most part, we are. Like,
yes, we are.
I took, even like when I slowed down playing a lot and I kind of just went through, because pretty much everything we win, we just put right to, a concert or going up to Niagara Falls or something like that, just immediately. But you're right. Like, I remember the one day I was at work and all the games were over and I had Mike Trout and I had a 10-point lead. And this is old school FanDuel when you would strike out and you would get negative points.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm at work and I'm like, I'm running around. I'm like, yeah, man. Oh, it's $3,000. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Right. So I go home and I'm all jacked up. I'm waiting. And Mike Trout strikes out the whole night. And I finished 9th place for $100 win. And I lost by 0.75. If he hit the one ball he would have had, I would not have lost. That's all I did. It just, and the next day he hits 2 home runs. Come on, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's fantasy sports in a wrap, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so talking hockey and things like that, what got you into hockey?
Well, I grew up in Minnesota. So when you grow up in Minnesota, you really have no choice but to kind of be a hockey guy. I'll be honest though, after the North Stars left Minnesota and went to Dallas, I didn't watch professional hockey for about 10 years. Until then I moved here to Chicago, and the Blackhawks were started to be kind of good. So it was kind of, I'm like, okay, well, I'm so pissed off at my Minnesota team. I don't give a rat's how they do.
Yeah.
And so we just started, hockey just kind of started catching on again. Then I had a son that we played hockey, and then my daughter played hockey, and so they've all played hockey. So it's just kind of what we do. And it's a great sport. You watch it all the time. You love to go. I mean, what sport is better live than going to a wrestling match?
Yeah. I said that on just a previous podcast. I said watching TV football is the best, but if you go there live, it's just blah. And baseball, the only thing cool about baseball is most of the times it's a nice hot day out, as long as it's an open stadium and you got some nice cold apple beers. And you got Miss Chrissy Ray in there serving them, and then we're working. She's working, getting paid. I got a free ride home too, so I could just get sloshed. And
that's what baseball games are mostly good for, is getting drunk.
But when you talk about hockey is great on the screen and in live. It's so fun. Like the Otters, just watching McDavid, those years going back to Corey Pecker days and Brad Boyd days, and that's about the timeline me and Chrissy actually got together and got married and did that. It's like I came into it and I'm just like, I played hockey on video games. I followed things because we had Gretzky in the mid 90s, early 90s, I should have said. But Chrissy was like, "Oh, we're all about the Otters." I was like, "Wait a minute, ain't the Panthers?" She's like, "No, man, we haven't had the Panthers in a long time," because it was the Golden Blades, the Erie Panthers, and then it moved up to the Otters. So then I'm like, well, whatever. Her family's just all about like this, and I'm just a football guy. So then, next thing you know, I started going to the games, and like you said, you have some beers, you dodge a few pucks, you catch a shirt, you just the atmosphere. It's really awesome. And it's so sad we haven't had that in Erie for such a long time, because the Erie Otters are like the backbone of Erie sport. Really.
Yeah, you guys have been spoiled there. That's you don't get that kind of hockey in the juniors level, and you guys have been treated as some fabulous players. I mean, and then all I can remember is you guys, the signs trying to get the free fries from Ollie.
Yes. Oh, that the one actually made the fry.
Yeah,
that was cool. We still have that. Like that to me is just like, I couldn't believe we thought that up, but it worked out. It came out better than it should have.
Yeah, I used to just love that. That was just fun.
Yeah. And some of the pictures, and then I would run into a lot of my old friends like that would just only be visiting for the weekend, like the Thanksgiving Day game, when a lot of my friends would come home with their family. And unfortunately, Chrissy had to work until this year. This is the first year we spent Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving.
So, right.
Because she has to be to work by 1, because the game starts at like 3. And sometimes they throw in like a teddy bear throw with it too. So that's like 25-30 minutes of cleanup. And it's just insane, dude, how it works. But you are right. We had some really good players, baseball wise too. We've had, some great players come through, like James McCann, of course, Verlander, and players like that. But again, a lot, when you look at the crowds for baseball, you're nowhere near like what hockey brings. Nowhere near. Like hockey, when the Otters did their championship, which sucked because they won the championship after McDavid left. But literally, we were packing 5,000-6,000 in the Erie Insurance Arena right before it was before it was even renovated. So we're putting all those people in. But then the baseball team, other than a buck nut, you go and there's just seating everywhere. So that's what I think, that like with the hockey not being in Erie, it's not going to be in Erie this year either. I unless they open the borders, which they are clearly not going to do. They don't have the season pushed back, I think, till February 4th. So
yeah, no, it's I just was reading today in the paper that the NHL, they were hoping to start January 1. That it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really kind of sad. It's kind of funny though. My wife went to the last Blackhawks game where their fans were allowed last season, and then all of a sudden it all shut down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I mean, just crazy times that we are in, and I understand kind of why they are, because these events aren't, people are going to get sick, and if we can we just got to slow it down just a little bit, get through to these vaccines and things. They'll start going back to normal again.
Yeah, because I mean, why did the Vegas Raiders build these massive stadiums with that many seats in it, and they're not being used? Like,
like
if we just bought a house, right? I'm pretty sure the loan company would have been like, hey, you got to make a payment or something. I'm like, I got nothing for a year for you, bro. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I got no revenue. Like, they just remodeled the whole ballpark over here. So like the beer garden, because it was originally flawed, because when you were sitting where we always sat, you would miss like the first baseline right there. So now they raised it up like a whole 1.5 feet, and they took the roof out fully a lot more, because it would only be out to like right here. Dude, you just bake up there. It was just wide open though, literally wide open. They would have, sometimes they pull out like the corn sacks and stuff and throw those, but they don't even throw that out all the time. So it's just wide open. That's where Chrissy would work. So, it was just naturally to be there, but now that's all redesigned. They added kitchens, they redesigned it, they took all this other stuff. Then they made this like huge walkway from their suites all the way over to the other suites over by the Otter Stadium. So all the like updates and stuff, if you haven't seen it or whatever, because they don't really do it on Facebook, but on Twitter they do it. But yeah, they literally did all that stuff, and it looks so nice, and it's empty. It's empty.
It's just sad, but it'll get used.
Yeah, and
sooner or later.
I heard we're gonna get the Seawolves back. I mean, there was choice that we were gonna lose them, and that the MLB was gonna cut a lot of AA teams, and the Seawolves was one of the teams on the chopping block. But I heard from this guy, he went and talked to one of the main guys. His name's Greg Coleman. He said that they're looking to start spring training beginning of May, which means probably Memorial Day weekend, maybe some baseball. But first and foremost is hockey, because if they don't do the borders, even if they do play without a crowd, the Otters aren't coming here. They're not coming across the border.
Is that because they can play there, or because they can't play in Erie?
Well, they can play. The last I checked, Governor Wolf, with the Pittsburgh Steeler games and everything, he's allowed fans. So they would be able, but the guys that own the Erie Insurance Arena, really, they haven't booked anything for their Bayfront Convention Center, nothing at all for that. And they haven't booked any shows this year or coming up next year for that right now. So I don't think so. But with them being the only, well, I think there's another American OHL team. Could be wrong. But I think I'm right. Yeah, I never really look at it, but I know the Otters are one of one or one of two. So you just move them across the border, and like what they're doing with the Toronto Raptors. They're going to have them playing down in Tampa Bay. So
right.
That's just the way it goes. It's sad, but it's like you want that back, because it's the Otters to Erie again, going back to that community. They do so much, and they so many people love to go see them, and hit the boards, and like we need that. What do you have up there for like AA or AAA?
We have, what is it, the Chicago Steel?
Okay.
They're the minor, and then for baseball, we got the Kane County Cougars, which is really fun. I mean, it's just, it's small time baseball, and the corn on the cob is the best. I mean, it's just dynamite. I mean, you take a bite into the corn, and it squirts all over the place, So it's like if you're going to the the Kane County Cougars game, you're getting some corn on the cob, and some good corn on the cob. That's one good thing about baseball too, is eating at baseball games you can do. Because there's time, you don't have to pay full attention to the game if you don't want to. And
Yeah.
And they just they cater to the kids there, which is the best. Running the bases after the game, catch with your dad out on the field after the game. Just all those kind of things that just make baseball intimate and real enjoyable for a family.
You bring up the point right there when you said all the intimate. That's what local sports are all about. Like, and I think that has to be part of why everybody's going so crazy is they don't have that hometown feeling, man.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
Not even a little.
I can't believe it. It's and with the Otters on their Thanksgiving Day game, they give out turkey legs. So
Oh,
people are
that's the
just
best.
Yeah, I know people are walking around with this huge turkey leg just dribbling all over the place. It's just like, what? What? Did you get enough?
Everyone's going. Is John Madden out front handing out legs?
Yeah, like turduckets. Outside, here, like, boom, here's a turkey leg. Like, yeah, dude, it's really I want it to come back, but I also love the Chrissy's perks of the jobs with the tickets, which I don't think they'll do comp tickets as much anymore. Like maybe for like a concert, she might be able to get some, but like baseball, they're not going to be giving her 10 tickets, every month, which was nice. That's why we went to so many games.
I know. That's what I figured. That's awesome, and that's
Yeah.
that's the kind of things that you got to take advantage.
Yeah, it's me and Molly going together. I mean, when we would have Tyler and Ivory, the older kids with us, it would be great. That would be like 5 tickets. But other than that, you look at it, you're spending anywhere from $15 a ticket up to $30 a ticket times two, and you're going to that. And some of those concert tickets, like when we seen Trans Siberian Orchestra, that was the only time I've seen them that I can remember. Maybe back in the day when I was a kid. But with like Molly, and she loved it, and it made her love that kind of jazzy rock,
Yeah.
Just classical kind of music. You know what they bring.
Yeah.
So you go to things that you like Disney on Ice. You just go to that. Like you find yourself literally going to things every day, and then if you just get cool with everybody, you're putting money, you're getting the revenue. But that's again, it comes back to it. If it doesn't happen as often, that's cool. It just needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it will.
And it will. But talking about stuff, one thing we do love to get into is wrestling.
I've been waiting to have this conversation with you for what, two months? Ever since you did that. And dude, I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. Your top 64 and, and I respected most, because I'll be honest with you, after probably 1985 or so, I didn't follow. I mean, you followed wrestling, but I didn't follow it like I did, because just like, you're talking about the minor league sports, the wrestling back in the day when I watched it had that intimate feeling. You knew the wrestlers, you knew that, and these were all guys they were from places that you had heard of, and like they had the Crusher from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and all he talks about is polkas and that he's drinking beer, and he couldn't believe that none of the other wrestlers smoked cigars like him. It's just like, but they were all just had these good characters, Mad Dog Vachon, and just all the guys from my era. And then I'm like, well, you had the golden age on there or something, I think is what you called it.
Yeah, that's the 80s.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of funny, because the 80s, I did a little research last night, and I was watching a bunch of YouTube stuff, which was I was just laughing, and I had so much fun. I felt like a little kid. I was like, God, I wonder if I was at that match. I wonder if I was at that match. So, well, and I kind of explained this to you before, yesterday, is like when I would go to the matches, we'd have like 10 of us go. One guy would buy a ticket.
Yep.
He would go in, he would hit the side door, and 10 of us would run in. There would be a security guard that couldn't leave his post because he had to stay there. We would just all run in, and he would be like, oh, and we're all in. And I can remember one of the biggest matches we went to was Verne Gagne, and the guy I want to talk about, versus Nick Bockwinkel. And it was a 2 out of 3 fall match, and for the AEWA championship. And I can remember we were up in the upper things, and there was these curtains that we would shimmy down to get onto the main floor, because they were like for the stage, and we'd shimmy down the curtains and we'd be on the main floor. And remember watching that match, and Verne wins the first fall, and then somehow the second fall he wins, but somehow the other guy got disqualified, so the belt doesn't change hands. You know how it always goes.
Oh, yeah.
There's always some technicality to it. So
it's beautiful.
But Verne, he was just, his big move was the sleeper hold, and he'd put guys out. It would be the ref would be holding the arm, see if he's awake or not.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was fun.
It was. Like that made me go back because when you were talking about like when you brought up Verne Gagne, and I'm like, okay, I know him, so let me just go back. And then of course, which would have been more was I saw his battles with Luthez, and if I said that right, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So I saw his battles with him, and then like you said, Nick Botwinkle, and then all through those eras right there, that's like my dad's stuff. Like that's what my dad would. He wouldn't talk about it much, but like it was really like when you were talking about the AWA and Hogan and Mean Gene, that's when my dad started really falling in love because he's 65. So, he's been doing that for a long time and watching it, but he never like brought that back. So when we got to like the 80s, what me and my friends remember is he would call himself the Bulkamania. And then he was Bulkamania because his name was Bob. And he would call himself Bob Hogan, but he would more so be like, Bulkamania is running wild. So this is me, like before mid 80s, and me and my friends are looking at each other, and my dad's over there like me now. And he's screaming out. And I'm like, that's what I remembered. So he never really talked too much about it. But what he talked about, of course, were the Von Erichs, the free bus. And he talked about a lot of that. So
those are the guys. And you brought up Putski last night too.
Ivan
Putski, and it's just they were just, I don't know, it was just good old wrestling. And seeing the one thing about Verne and the AWAs, what he really went for, he didn't get into the gimmicky guys so much at first. He wanted more of the technical guys. He liked the guys that had been in college or wrestled on the Olympic teams, and because he was an Olympic wrestler himself back then, and a champion, and so that was kind of what he did when he had brought on the AWA and kind of brought this up, and then they got a hold of Hulk Hogan. I mean, and how he was lucky enough to land Hulk Hogan, I have no idea. And Hulk Hogan, him and Mean Gene just went crazy, and Mean Gene just came from Minnesota. He was just the regular guy that was on our local thing all the time, and all of a sudden Mean Gene's on WWE, and we're all just like, I knew Mean Gene when he was still just Mean Gene.
See, I didn't really know that, like, even though I've known Mean Gene, I didn't know he was from up that area too. But then when you were talking, and then I made that, and then I went and looked, and I seen Verne's from up there in Minnesota. I'm like, all right, like,
well, then the one that him and Hulk, and then there was Jesse the Body Ventura. Oh my! Him and Adrian Adonis, the East-West connection. They were the tag team guys, the bad guys on the tag team, and Verne's son Greg and Jumpin' Jimmy Brunzell, the High Flyers. Man, they always had their matches, and these two big, huge guys were beating up on these two little guys, and these little guys just used to fly all over the place. And like they had remember the one year they had the cage match between the two, and freaking Adonis walks all the way up on top of the cage and slams down on Greg Gagne, and all of a sudden Gagne's there shaking on the canvas like, oh, Greg's hurt. Gagne is hurt. He is the announcer. It's just the good fun,
Oh, dude, and I had Molly. We were watching some of the older Royal Rumbles or Survivor Series that came up, right? And Jesse was commentating on one of them, and he said something, and Molly was like, "What did he say?" I was like, "It was bad back then. It was really bad." I remember one time we and my buddies were all watching. I know it's on tape somewhere. But Bobby Heenan, he's just sitting there.
The Brave, the Weasel.
The Weasel, dude. He's sitting there commentating, and he's like, hold on. And he goes, hey, Stu, wake up. And oh, my God. He had been tearing Stu Hart apart that whole pay-per-view. He was like, look, he's over there sleeping again. And he's like, hold on. And I used to, me and my friends, we just couldn't take it. Because, like, it was like the first WrestleMania was big. My dad ordered it. And then we ordered the second one, and I remember that flipping. It was weird, but I remember it was great. But then, of course, WrestleMania 3 was one where my dad was like, "Hey, tell some of your friends to come over. I know they, your buddy Dave, which is still like my oldest wrestling friend of all time, and tell them to come over, and we'll do this pay-per-view. We'll get some wings. And 50 wings back then was like $8.
Yeah.
So, you get like 200 orders of wings, and it's like $30. And we would just sit there and we get the pizzas, and then we would just have fun, and we did it. And then of course I carried the torch. But just those times when you talked about, like, like Brunzell, like I remember him as like the Killer Bees.
Yes.
So for me,
Yeah.
the Killer Bees, I loved them because they were baby face, but they had that heel turn when they would put the little masks
Oh
on.
yes.
And there's, oh man, so many. And that's how I know like all those wrestlers. Like of course I grew up with, like of course $1 Million Man and Bam Bam Bigelow and King Kong Bundy and all those guys. But then I would always hear about the Wild Samoans. And then like, eventually we got the Head Shrinkers. It just like the family tie to wrestling, and then all of the years. That's why like the WWE network to this day is still one of the greatest things, is getting a hold of the Mid South and being able to release it, and then having access to the ECW, having access to all the WCW. Like some of those pay-per-views, like when they did the whole World War where they were in water, they had the 3 rings in water and they're swimming. Like, what is that? But
I never saw that.
you never saw when they had it in the water. They
Oh my
had it.
god.
They had it. It was like one of those like hog wild kind of ones, but it was more like water. And they put it in the water, and they're just outside, just punching each other in the water. And I'm like, this is like they were trying everything, but and that's what got Nitro up and started getting that whole WCW push, which eventually gave us Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
So back
Yeah.
to what were you
It's
saying?
funny because you bring up some of the other things, and when we were kids in Minnesota, we obviously got the AWA, and if you were lucky enough to have cable TV, you could get Georgia Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you saw Ric Flair and all those guys were all down there, and my buddy would always go, "Oh, you got to come over," and we would go over to his house because there was only one guy that had cable that I knew, and so we'd go to his house and on Saturday nights and watch Georgia Wrestling. So we got a little more variety, it
was
good,
good. And
good senseless fun.
yeah, and the thing is going back to that, that's where like my dad, like when, because there was this whole Hogan thing, and then Warrior, and then Bossman, and then all those guys were there, right? And then my dad would always, we don't, WCW was of course on TV, but you'd have to catch it weird times, and then my dad would be like, yeah, Flair and Dusty Rhodes. I was like, what are you talking about?
Exactly, Dusty Rhodes,
So
Georgia Wrestling.
he started coming out, and then I started watching, and that's when I first saw Ricky Steamboat, and I was like, holy shit, I fucking love that dude. And that's like, for a lot of people, like you said, they stopped watching it kind of shortly after, because that's why when I did the Attitude Era, I kind of combined the Attitude Era with that Bret Hart era, whatever.
Right.
They called that the New Age era or whatever like that. Um, that era right there was, I think, is what kind of killed, because that's when you had Hogan, you had Yokozuna as the champion, Bret Hart as the champion, but Hogan was about to go to WCW, and then you had that whole thing where he was still at WWF. So it kind of made that whole transition, and then a lot of people didn't. I think that's where Bret Hart loses a lot of respect as a champion, is because I don't think there was really anybody left but him. And that's what I think, that a lot of people just kind of disconnected from that at that age. And then of course the next era would have been when Stone Cold picked it up, leading into ultimately the John Cena era for me. But for everybody, but like that whole age gap right there, there's that break. And I've always noticed that this break, and then after the attitude break, and then John Cena, right up until the Miz became the champ there for like a year or two, whatever, like months. That little thing right there, those are when I've noticed that wrestling fans is pretty much just fall off.
it just got to be almost too much. So sometimes the storylines were just got to be a little too exotic, and you're just like, come on, we just want to see some good fun wrestling. We don't sometimes don't need some of the show, but but your guy, the Macho Man, I mean, come on, he was entertaining, and he was smart because he had the good looking manager. So that was all us boys were like, well, we like the manager better than we like Macho Man. So this is we'll watch him anytime. If he's gonna come on and do an interview, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, George Animal Steel. That was like my first exposure to him, and I liked a lot of, that's why I liked him. It was because he had that feud with Macho Man, but she was sympathetic for him, and he would just be sitting there like not even just about the eating the freaking turnbuckles. When I showed Molly him, she's like, "What's he wearing?" I was like, "That's his back hair."
Well, that's like you see Mad Dog Vachon.
Yeah.
Oh my God, talk about back hair. Ooh. Holy crap. And I was just watching some interview with him. He was building a pine box, and I can't remember which wrestler he was building the pine box for. And me and Gene Okerman's in there interviewing, and I'm just like, this is one of the weirdest interviews I've ever seen in my life. You got Mad Dog Vachon pounding on the pine. That's where I'm going to put them in a pine box. You know what goes in a pine box, don't you mean, Gene?
And those will never, like, people don't know. They always think that, like, of course, to the Macho Man and stuff, but man, like, it's before that. The superstar Billy Graham. There's a reason why the Macho Man.
I watched the superstar Billy Graham. I was watching him last night. He was part of the Bobby Brain Heenan, the whole the Weasel group. Him, Bockwinkel, Kenny Patera.
Yep.
Just those guys, all the blondes. It was hilarious. These blonde guys, and it was just and Ray Stevens. That was the big one. It was funny.
Yeah.
I was watching a thing last night where Bobby the Brain Heenan was winning Manager of the Year, and he kept talking, and they were he would let Bockwinkel talk, and every time Stevens wanted to talk, he'd keep pushing it back. Hey, back! You don't need it. And all of a sudden, Stevens takes the trophy, breaks it over, and then the melee right during the interview, with his manager. Just that kind of fun stuff. Just
it is
good stuff.
They have, if you watch some of those classic rewinds that they have on the WWE network, they have those setups to, like, with the Andre one where they had like Andre and John Studd. Go watch some of that. Like, John Studd just comes out and he's just like, that was like that feud at that point. Cause I remember that was like, that's what I always thought was like, okay, Andre has Studd, and that always seemed like where Taker was always fighting the big guys. Well, he was, of course, was the big guy at first, the Taker, but
the Undertaker, he was the big guy. He was the first big guy on WWE back when they first started coming out. I mean, he was a monster too.
Yeah. Like that's what the whole Giant Gonzalez thing, or El Giante from WCW. He could, like, nobody was big after Andre left. Studd was gone. You pretty much had like the natural disasters with Earthquake and Tugboat. That was like your meat, but there was, and Yokozuna was the biggest. But dude, remember that casket he built for Yokozuna, dude?
Yes.
Wow, dude, that right there, that was. But you're right, like, as in size, up until Diesel finally started wrestling, nobody had like that stature with the Undertaker. They couldn't stand eye to eye with the Taker, and that's where, of course, that's where the nostalgia began. And going back to my, my bracket, I didn't know who was going to win. I knew Hogan wasn't going to win. I didn't think Flair would win, but I wouldn't have been surprised. I knew Dusty wasn't going to win, but I had thoughts that the Undertaker could win that just because of the sheer dominance of that many, errors. But also, like, it just his gimmick, the music, the evolution. We hear it all the time. It's the greatest gimmick ever. But you would think when you got a bunch of people voting and you're putting it all together, what's going to end up being the number one? And what ends up being the number one was the Taker. But it came down to that. Like, Hogan was out of it. I think Hogan lost to Roddy Piper. I still have it all saved.
Well, come on, Roddy Piper. I mean, that was Georgia wrestling. That was one of the guys that we used to love to watch that we didn't have in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But like I said, on that thing, you had it pretty well represented. I was very, I was like, okay, I can deal. Some of the eras I wasn't as versed on, but I was like, you just are missing out on Verne. He was just too influential on without the success that they had in Minneapolis and in the mid, because they would come down to Chicago. Verne had Minneapolis, Chicago. That was kind of the, Wisconsin, and they. A lot of the big matches. It seemed like when I was a kid, all the really big matches happened in Chicago. We were like, why don't they have that match up here? We can't go see it in Chicago, and you could only get it on pay-per-view or closed circuit television or whatever it was back in the day.
That's what it was. Yeah, you see, our exposure too, it was like I said, WCW was that, but it was always WWF/E. But then, like early '90s, if you stayed up till like 4 a.m. in the morning, you could catch ECW, and it'd be playing some like the first time I ever saw it, I was like, "What is this?"
Exactly.
They had some Rob Zombie music playing, and I was like, I hit record real quick, and I was like, "Yo, dude!" And I showed my buddies. I was like, "Look at this! What is this?" But again, you only had Pro Wrestling Magazine. You only had magazines. You didn't have like this, and you pick it up and you could find out what you wanted back then. Even video games and cheats and stuff like that, you had to actually figure it out yourself or ask your friends and hope one of them figured something out because you didn't have this.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing what we can do on our phones now? I mean, just the information. I mean, you can run your fantasy team completely from your phone. You don't even need your computer anymore. I remember the days. It's funny. We moved into this house here that in back in the late 90s, and I can remember when because we had it built and said we got to have phone adapters in every single room. Well, geez, that got obsolete after like 5 years after, because everything wasn't it was all of a sudden this internet thing came and or maybe we were still the internet, but the wireless, and you didn't have to hook up, you didn't have to dial in.
You always had to have that one computer hooked up. I mean, they got it nice now, and that's the thing is we didn't have that when we was a kid, so we only had stories, and a lot of times those stories were secondhand stories. Like you don't know if it was true or false. Like, and I remember the one there was a lot of filming would eventually happen in Erie. Well, they had this one Superstars, and like we were talking about with you, one person would go buy a ticket, get in, and open the door. Well, I would be the one person that would buy everybody's ticket, so everybody would just give me money. And what's kind of crazy is at the time Civic Center is in not so good part of town, so there'd be all these people with like 40, $50 a ticket sitting there, and there's like 20 of us in line ready to get front row seats. And then, eventually the internet caved way, and I sat there, and it was like 2 a.m. in the morning, and me and this dude and his grandma would always show up, and we would just be sitting there no matter what, rains, just sitting there. And we got in there, and it was second row, third row only available. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is all we get. This is all we have a chance at now. So like, that's why I was like, I'm done. I gave it a couple shots, and I saw that the internet had completely taken over, and I was done. But we got this one show, so my dad and I got all my friends to go, and we're all sitting here front row, and my brother is massive, and it's Superstars, and we get there, and they have all the banners up, and I'm like. It's gonna be filmed. It's gonna be filmed, guys. And this is right after Tatanka turned bad. So this is like you sold out, Lex. And so we get it starts. It starts at 7. Gets to 8, 8:30. All right, they do an intermission. So my dad's like, all right, that's cool. My dad's just drinking. We just have enough. We're just loving wrestling. My dad's slamming beers, and then it's about 9, and we get to about 9:30. 10 o'clock, and they take another intermission. And my dad's like, I got to get up for work at 4 a.m. in the morning. So we're all sitting there, and he had to take us all home. So we're sitting there still doing this thing, and we're just like, all right, and then other wrestlers start coming out a second time, like Tatanka and Men on a Mission when they were bad too, came out again. And I'm like, what's going on? And so they all came out again, and there's these college dudes, and they slapped Mabel really hard. So when Tatanka came back out the next time, he came near us, and Tatanka saw my thing, and he gave me a 5, even though he's bad. he freaking saw the college dudes. He looked over. He was like, "Don't even start some stuff. I'll come over that railing right now." And I was like, "Whoa, it's a talking broke character there." So then, we get there. Now it's 12. And they take another intermission. I'm
Oh
like,
my God.
my dad's like, I gotta go to work, but I can't leave because I have all these kids, right? Ended at 1:30 in the morning. 6.5 hours of wrestling in Erie, PA. It was probably one of the coolest events I'd ever really been to, even though it was an event. But how did you keep people involved over 6 hours in an arena? That's a lot.
Lots of alcohol.
Lots of alcohol and a long day at work for my dad the next day. Definitely had. But when you were bringing up all those things, it all comes back to like the local sports, going to be able to see things, the camaraderie, the pay-per-views here that of course were killed this year because of the Corona Mania. It just having my buddy Dave come over, and then other people started coming over. Like one of the guys that listens to the podcast, Ian, he's a big wrestling guy, and they all started coming over, and we would all, me and Chrissy, we just cook a big meal. I mean, I know you've seen the pictures over the years.
Oh yeah, I love them.
We got everything out.
They're my favorite things about Facebook. I love it when I see a picture at you guys at Niagara Falls. If I see pictures of Molly, you guys in Kiss costumes. I mean, those are the reasons why I'm on Facebook. Now, there's other things that are on Facebook, and they drive me nuts, and I comment on them, but I'm just like, So, but I stay on there just because it's I like to see what's going on. I like, I feel like you and I just become better. I mean, this is the first time that we've ever sat down and really, really talked.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've been friends for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, and good friends. So, I mean, it's, I was telling my wife the other day, I said, some of my best friends are the guys that I've met through fantasy football and Dr. Roto. And it's amazing, talking about Dr. Roto, and thank God you haven't brought it up yet, is my 0-12 team in the Dynasty League.
Wow. I know you're better than that, but
look at it. What is it? A 16-team league for one.
Yeah. Yes.
I had the fourth pick. I picked Michael Thomas. So, and so you're not getting another pick till like pick 30. So it's like, so if your first pick didn't pan out a little bit, you're going to be gone. And like, remember the Juggernauts, he's a really good friend of mine. That's George. Okay. And you don't know George very well, but he's always been my partner when we go do the big FFWC things out in Vegas. We draft, and he'd be my partner, and we always would share teams and that kind of stuff because they're a little more spendy than I want to spend on a team, and
that's cool though. Double it up, you have two minds, and sometimes that's what it takes.
Oh, it's so fun. It's something that big. We have so much fun out there. It's just amazing. What was I saying?
You were talking about your team and how it got, and you were talking about the Juggernauts and your draft and how drafting at the beginning and then going all the way through 30 picks and
So and he told me, he goes, well, that's what I remember. He was like, well, because Thomas was hurt and out, and he goes, well, at least it's a dynasty league and you can use Thomas next year. And I'm like, gee, thanks, George, but I'm going to have a tough season this year. And I just have had some really bad luck in that league. I mean, I look at my team, it's not horrible, but I look at, I got Herbert now. So, I mean, I got him for, it's a dynasty league. And the only other dynasty team and it's in the IDP, where the only other time I've ever played that is with you. And I kind of missed that league. That I was in with you, that we were, then it came a keeper league, and I got mad for some stupid reason. So then I said, I'm going to be out. And I was I'm like, that was pretty stupid.
Yeah, it's still going the same stupid shit in that league. Like, what's going on is I actually just lost my second placing. I'm the only guy that beat the top guy. The guy who won the title last year has one loss. I have 3, but now the guy who beat me was the other division leader, because we had the 3 divisions. He's still in the league too, is Penny Pins. He's got 2 losses. I got 3 losses. And then go down here and everybody's freaking 6-6 and 5-7.
It's crazy.
I'm like, I don't know it's kind of like our league, and that's what kind of we're getting into. Like, I was sweating bullets like the last couple of weeks because I'm like, I got couple teams that are 1 to 2 losses behind me. I knew I was going to lose eventually, but then I watched their points total go up, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm not going to get the point total, and then I'm going to lose a first round bye, and I'm getting really scared. And then this week happens, and it's like both two teams that were even close to me both lost. I won. I'm clearly the number one seed now. It doesn't even matter. And then I looked at the rest of the league, and I'm like 8-4, 8-4, 8-4, 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, 6-6, and I'm like,
Yep.
anybody can win that league right now,
Well,
except my division. That whole other division's wide open.
Yeah, it's like, and this is a whole different league. Last week I'm playing. It's another 16-team league, and I'm playing. I'm number 9. This guy's number 8. Top 8 teams make the playoffs. I'm like, perfect, just the guy I need to play. Well, Thursday comes and I start out awesome. I have Amari Cooper and he goes off on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then I also picked up the Washington defense and they had a spectacular day on Thanksgiving. So I'm like got a 50-point lead going in. I'm like, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, then it comes all the way down to Monday night. I have Russell Wilson. I'm down by like 14 points. So I'm like, sweet, I should win this one easy.
Yeah.
Well, Russell Wilson, this, and it's just slowly but surely. And I'm like, Jesus. Well, then finally at the end of the game, he gets the ball, he scrambles for 5 yards. And I'm like, okay, I just need one more scramble. And I got the win. Well, then he scrambles for another 10 yards. Yeah. And I'm like, I was up by 0.15. Next thing he does, he has that 2-yard loss where he tries to run it. And it took enough points off where I ended up losing by 0.05 points. And I sweated it out all Monday night just watching that. And I'm like, are you serious? A 2-yard loss is going to be what kills me? So unfortunately, I'm the 10th team now and no chance of making the playoffs. And it was just, damn.
Yeah. They, it was kind of crazy coming into this week too, because up in my other league, I have a Yahoo league that I play with those same people too in that ESPN league, but it's only a 10-team league, and I lost that week to that guy who ended up taking my division spot. So I moved to the 3rd spot, and I have like in this team I have like Jacobs, McCaffrey, and freaking Chubb, and I'm like, it's just I have Dalvin Cook, Jacobs, and McCaffrey. And I'm like, I'm stacked, but not having McCaffrey for a little bit, that hurts. And then, you can't always have Dalvin Cook bail you out because believe me, he's bailed me out a lot.
Yeah, no, that's the one league that I'm only going to make the play. I play in 10 teams. Mm-hmm. And this is by far the worst season I've had. Just, COVID, the whole, just so unpredictable. Unfortunately, I drafted Michael Thomas on 6 of my teams. I was all over him. He was my guy. I was like, I'm going to be a fantasy champ in all my leagues with him. And
he's number 1.
I remember overall. I got him like 9th in one pick in draft. I had the 9th pick and he fell to me. And there was somebody in the draft. Well, that was a gift, Kickman. And I'm like, yeah, I thought so too, And but Dalvin Cook is the one. I got him in one league that I'm not dominating, but I'm going to make the playoffs. And he bailed me out 2 weeks in a row with 40+ points. I mean, come on, he's a beast.
Yeah, he clearly, I don't care what anybody says, he's literally the best running back in the league. Like, he runs, he gets a lot of touches, he catches passes, and unless Cousins fucks it up really bad,
which he does.
He does. He fucking really fucks it up. Like that whole game last time, I'm like, this dude's got nothing going into half. At the end of the game, he outperformed like Goff and Josh Allen on good games, and I'm like, what the? He's just sitting on my bench for like 58 points, and I'm like, I didn't even think about playing you because I'm scared half the time.
Well, he sits on my bench in the Dynasty League because I play Herbert all the time, and I was there a few times where I wish I would have, but it is what it is.
Oh, Herbert's just amazing. Like, that's who's been one of my quarterbacks and been on a lot of my write-ups over the past, I'd say 6 weeks. It's been Herbert. But like when you talk about the Dynasty League, I was so happy he actually had that as a snake because I was like one of the last picks as well. I was like pick
Yes.
14.
See, and
So
I think that's ideal in that though. I mean, I think the lower you are, because you knew you were going to get two really good players no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest thing is I didn't know when to draft the defensive guys. I wasn't really sure on how, and I think I wish I would have even waited a little longer, because right now the defensive guys are the guys you can find them still out there. I mean, you can't find running backs. Nope. There's no wide receivers. There's absolutely no quarterbacks. So those
tight ends.
And yeah, exactly. And it's bad. But I've been able to find and make my defense good, through the waiver wires over the last part. But it was just a thing that I just couldn't. It was just really hard. And 40 round draft. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
I mean, that was beef, right?
It took like a month and a half. Doc was like,
I know, that was pretty cool.
I was like, hey, and then every time he'd be like, Heat, you're on the clock, and I'd be out of town in Ohio, and my phone for some reason just wasn't running it well, and it just like I had to wait till I got home to do it with the computer, and so my strategy I went through a lot of my teams, so a lot of my teams that are really good all have like the core players, so you're going to see a lot.
That's the way it is. You're like me. Your teams are going to be either good or bad. I mean, because you have a lot of the same players. I look at my teams, and I've got the teams that my season's been the way it is because I've drafted the same players. I look at, geez, I got 6 players that are all the same on most of my teams.
Yeah, and that, but it makes it a little easier, because when you got a lot of teams, I know who you're thinking about. You're like, all right, we'll just be good. But
so what was your strategy? Tell me, because you're doing well.
Well, my strategy was, because I was at the back of the draft, I was going to pick, pretty much the end of the barrel stuff. And then by the time I came around, so that's why you see me take Chubb and Jones. And because they're both young too, and that they were going to do that. So then I knew when I came back around, I think that's when I picked Thielen. And then I think I picked Cooper Kupp when I came back around. So I had those 1-2s. And then that 1-2 right there, which was like, all right, so I don't have the big, sexy, superstar receivers, but I got volume. I have volume here in good offenses for the most part. I mean, Thielen does get a lot of play. So, he does that. And Cooper gets a lot of, he gets his games like last week, but then he gets his other weeks where he catches like 14 balls. So, I got that, but it was all about that beginning thing. So when I got past that, it was immediately, okay, past the tight ends, go for quarterbacks that are going to last in a dynasty. And the 2 quarterbacks, of course, that came to mind were Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff. So I built that, and then I tried to go young and then old at tight end with both O.J. Howard and Gronk, and then that's when I threw in Jack Doyle. And right about that point is, I also got Ronald Jones in that time period.
Well, that's what I mean. You're solid.
Yeah, it's stacked. And guess this week I have Devonta Booker, but he's not in a good matchup. But now with Josh Jacobs out, I have a 4th running back that I cannot use, and I'm not going to put him in over Jones. But at the I have to, because Jones is off. I haven't even.
Jones is not playing. How crazy it is to have this buys on week 13.
Yeah, it's working in one league because this one.
I know.
God. This guy I'm playing in this one league has Tampa Bay players, has other players that are off, and then the rest of the list is all COVID.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's what you want. That's the way fantasy works.
It is. It's like, okay, it's just like, this is good for me. And then my one buddy, he's playing the number 1 team, because I lost the number 1 seed when I lost last week in that one league. But I still got right now I have the bye. So the guy I'm playing, he's going to get waxed, and he's one of the worst teams in the league. So it's like starters like Ezekiel Elliott, and then Kareem Hunt. And then after that, it's because everybody else is off and dead, in COVID. So then I'm looking at him. My one buddy that's fighting to get in is playing the number 1 team. So I'm like, dude, he wins. I win. I got my number 1 seed back. But as long as I get that bye in that league, that's cool.
That's all you want.
But in that league too, it's Aaron Jones, and then it's who's my other running back? Oh, it's James Conner. So I've had a little problem with that, because he just gets consistent work, and then they kind of just don't use him.
And then they let Benny Snell snake touchdowns.
Yeah. But in that league, I mean, for straight top to the thing, I have Josh Allen and Jared Goff is backup, but I'll go as Josh Allen, Aaron Jones, James Conner, DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, Darren Waller, and then I play Deontay Johnson, and the bench has like Le'Veon Bell and Corey Davis, and just that's where I have like my Snell, and then I have I have all that backup options right there, so it really helps that team, but it doesn't always help because in my McDonald league, I'm third in scoring by like 20 points, and we're the only people that are like up here, and my record's 6-6.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yep. And then I was looking at the Dirty Sanchez league. I could still catch you in points. I was looking at I'm about 50 down from you.
Yeah, we're all in it. Like, and I had that one that I look it back. It was that 1 week, right around. It was those. I think we went to Niagara Falls like 3 times in like 4 weeks, and that whole weekend. That's that 110, that 126 and a 130, and that 110. I did that in the hotel room with shoddy internet service, and that's what I was saying. It wasn't really working, so I couldn't even see who I was putting in the one side. So I was like, I didn't know. Like I was like, and I was like, oh, it worked, cool. Whatever happens, happens, and that's what it is. But like Doc's been owning that league, and
I lost by 2 points last week. I had 194 and top was 196. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, I felt pretty good with my one. I saw you up there. I was like at 186 and I was done. I was like, hell yeah. And I made that change. So because what ended up happening is like you hear this strategy all the time is like go swing for the fences after Ezekiel Elliott shit to bed, but I did hit Fuller. I went back and I took that defense and I put the Rams defense in, and then I changed the tight end to it was Kyle Rudolph. That was my key, was Kyle Rudolph.
That was huge.
And from Kyle Rudolph, I opened up from Tyreek Hill to, or I had
you had to have Hill.
I had Justin Jefferson, and I switched Justin Jefferson for Tyreek Hill, but I didn't have enough money to come off a Cooper Kupp for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, so I think I had Jefferson and Hill, and I think I went really low at defense, where I just took the lowest defense I could there, and I think I had Green Bay or somebody that I ended up doing pretty good there too. Yeah. And then but Tyreek Hill was everything. He got like 60 points that week, so it was delightful.
And another thing, go back, I took Mahomes out and put in Josh Allen. So even though I got Tyreek Hill, it was like those little fluctuations helped me get that. So, just little moves like that. And then, of course, having already Will Fuller, because if you've noticed, when they finally reveal it, you'll see that like I started going into the Thursday games and I'm like, let me try to pluck somebody out of here. And sometimes it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't, but it just put like Ezekiel Elliott 3 points, like, oh my God. And there's people that drafted that too.
Oh, I know. I don't have him on any of my teams, like I said, because I was all Michael Thomas. I mean, I was all about Michael Thomas.
I went into this figuring that people were gonna maybe go after Cooper Kupp, but sometimes that Robert Woods factor kind of gets put into there. So, I mean, but in the Dynasty League, that's why you saw me end up with, Thielen and Woods. I said Kupp earlier, but I meant Woods.
Yeah.
And Woods gets a lot of running when there's like a lot of things happen with the passing games. The Rams do those runs. So that's really helped me. But, on 2 of my teams, maybe even 3 of them, it's definitely 2 of them. I have DeAndre Hopkins and freaking Cooper Kupp. So it's the same, like we were talking about, it's the same build. But when it comes to defense, if you look at my defensive players, that's when I kind of separated, because I have Aaron Donald, Sheldon Richardson. I've got my ends are really good, and then that's when I went and I got Blake Martinez, and then my corners are really good. I think I have White or whatever, Buffalo, but it's my Indianapolis corner Moore. I think I have, and then I have Jalen Ramsey, and then my safeties I have Edmonds, I have Jeremy Chin. That was my key.
Jeremy Chin. I mean, come on. The back-to-back touchdowns against the Vikings. I was watching the game. We finally get the game here on TV because the Bears were late. It was the Bears and the Packers were late. So then that's the game we'll get is the Vikings game. That's kind of how it works.
Yep.
And I was like, I get to watch the Vikings. And then that it started off that second half. I was like, oh my God, I can't even watch this. I turned it off and they ended up winning. I was just, I switched to the other game. I was like, I can't do this. I mean, are you serious? They're going to do this kind of crap?
Yeah, that was bad. And then, like I said, 58 points later for it was one of those things. I was talking to Doc about it a month or so ago. And I was like, I wish, but it would be too hard because it takes so much. Is just go back and add up everybody's just defensive player totals for every week going up to the year. And I just feel that I have to be top 3 because I've had a couple 20, 29-point games from Aaron Donald in that time.
Dang.
And it's those players last week, the previous week, I played him this week too. I went and on Sunday morning, I was like, man, I'm just not feeling Josh Bynes. And I think I have Wilson for Kansas City, but he was off. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. And I was between 2 players. I can't remember the other one, but it was Alex Singleton for Philly. It's like, you know what? I'm going to play him. 20 points. Like it just that to me, that was a pull. And, I did the little bit of research going into it, and I just felt he was in a good spot, and I played it, and it worked out, but then you have 2 weeks ago when Adam Thielen, I thought for sure I won that game and I lost by 2. And that's when he scored those 2 touchdowns. And I was like,
yep.
Oh yeah, I got this. And then I lost.
So yeah, I lost I was playing against Thielen that week too. And he burned me. That was brutal.
Oh yeah. It's, and that's football. And then, like going back to like wrestling and things like that too, it's good that we have these things because if you've noticed when I was getting into like going back and forth with some people about the election and things like that, and I wasn't trying to change their views, but I'm just saying that I didn't, I wasn't, for that type of regime. I took at one point, I just took a step back. I was like, look, NFL starting, and I ain't gonna have time for this shit. I'm not gonna have time.
No, I don't. It's just, yeah, I don't have time for it either. And I've learned not to post stuff because I don't want to get into the conversation. And I'm not out there to try to change anybody's mind. I'm just telling you how I feel,
Exactly.
And you know how I am. I'm pretty much to the point. If I think it's stupid, I'll tell you I think it's stupid. If it's not, but I just don't want, I got one thing I put out there, the election guy that was in Georgia. And it's this kind of stuff really makes me sad is, he was complaining about all the people, that they're threatening and that this kind of stuff has to stop and blah, blah. And I put it out there and I get more hits on that than when I put my daughter in hockey, showing her doing something good in hockey. I'm like, why don't you guys comment on this stuff? Yep. And you comment on this stuff. And it just drives me insane.
Like you made a comment earlier that most of your friends and people that you kind of associate with anymore is mostly the internet people. Yeah. So internet friends, whatever you want to call them, those are my biggest supporters of Bring the Pain. Like, yeah, it's the people that I know from that. It ain't my family. It ain't some of my immediate friends, like my buddy Dave, he's the one that made my theme music. And then for, the things that make me a jerk too, because I love that too. But he did all that stuff. And, that theme, he knew that just one of the guys, the table scene was always one of like me and my friends' core things where it's like, we could get a special, treat from a guy, special guy. And, Dave's lived with me all my life. Like, he's just been put up with me. So he knows that's kind of like, it was good to see it happen. So, it's support like that. It's like support like Nick and then bringing you on and having just an amazing, talk about just so many different topics and things like that that's what I want to do. And that's what but the Corona Mania, unfortunately, for some people sucked. But for me, it allowed me to buy this laptop. It allowed me to buy this computer thing. It allowed me to buy these. Look at that. They even change colors. Like,
nice.
It allowed me to buy this stuff. And I have all my microphones over there that you'll see when I'm doing, my solos and things like that. It allowed me to do it. It allowed me to set up. It allowed me and Chrissy to buy some things to further her business, her paparazzi. Right,
stuff. I watched that. I checked all that stuff out. I love you guys, man. I think you guys are amazing. I love the family unit. I just really truly enjoy our friendship.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good. And that's where this goes because And then that makes me think back to all the hockey things that we used to do together too. And that's why we brought up Cappy. And that's
Yep.
why, you know, that timeline, those time periods, which haven't really been talked about as much until like right now, you know, it's like wrestling in its own way. It has its beginning where it's slow and you have your guy that's loud is me, and then you have
Yeah.
Hughes right to the point, and then you have Doc with his one hits, his roto visionaries, and then you would have
Visionary.
Tommy and his write up, and then you got Renner, and then you had Cappy, and
Yep.
then you had Roy Dog, and then
Yep.
we had all these people that were working, and then we all evolve over time. And Jeff's kind of mentioned that a few times on his podcast, a little bit at the earlier podcast, is that it's like it's great that all these people, when Roy Dog came on the one time, and maybe I did or something, but he brought up, he was like that all these people have moved on, have become better fantasy players and do their own content, and these are the people that people support. But it's only the people like online, and it's never really our family or friends, because they just go to Facebook and they're like, "Oh, Rob's got another Bring the Pain out. Says
Yeah.
I hate masks. Don't listen to that one." And then, well, I mean, I hit that one. That was because that was like I recorded that the night after I got 2 weeks of my vacay taken. Uh,
Oh,
yeah. So I was really steamed, and then I went into work the next day, and then they had to talk about me and my mask stance online.
really?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, I get it that, I am extreme, and they go, "Well, you're here, you're like, no complaints, people love you," and that, I was like, "'Cause I'm doing my job." But
Yep.
when I go home and I have a podcast and say I have somebody on that, isn't gonna talk about the things we're gonna talk about, say somebody comes on and literally sits here and talks all that, or talks Boule or whatever, Illuminati, I have to, I told her, I was like, "I have to talk that." That's the way it goes. And if you don't agree with it, then you can either fire me or you don't fire me. But you're always going to get great employee work. I'm always going to be there. I'm always going to bring the pain and make sure that my job is done correctly and that my customers love me and that I'm always going to bat for my customers. But if you step into my Bring the Pain podcast, I mean, at that point, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Well, it's but the Bring the Pain podcast. I mean, like wrestling, you got to be a character. When
Yeah.
I'm different. When I would go into Kickman. And
Yep. Kickman.
Kickman, different than Tom Kicker. Kickman, I was the hockey guy. And
Yeah.
that's you got to get a character. You got to get a shtick. And if you don't have a shtick, why pay attention?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's what it is. It's heat override. There's a reason why there's a bomb as a planet with a huge freaking. It's lit because I'm ready to. Oh
Explode.
yeah, yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. it's it's that, and that's another thing too. Is I think that maybe some people look at it as childish, but when I dress up as Macho Man, it's just to just like I get such a crowd reaction from it when I'm at, like, even when we did like halfway to Halloween the one
You
time,
do
and
a good Macho Man though too. That's part of the problem. I mean, you get into character, and then I watch those and I just laugh. I'm like, you are crazy, but
yeah,
you got him down. I mean, you get into the character, and
yeah,
and
you
and you
just
got to have fun with it, and you don't take yourself too seriously sometimes.
no, it just you got it, and I think that and holding on to the wrestling and all of the sports, like when you see a lot of these people always worried about all these things in life, and it's like, dude, football's coming. Like, I don't
Yeah,
even care anymore. I'm gonna do some write ups.
exactly.
I'm gonna win some money, and I don't care. Like, it's not gonna happen. And that's what I like, and that's why, like you said with Doc, and then it just everybody had their thing, and that's what separates every like yourself or anybody from anybody else, and that's what makes I gotta still say that's still a core of what happened, even though like Tommy got out of the game other than where he's at now with his four deep and stuff like that. Yeah, he's still slaying. I sat there in those bet rooms, and those guys just bet anything all day long, dude. I'm betting freaking table tennis, and I'm like, guys, check this parlay out, and I'm like, but at some point you just gotta put it away and go do something else, because you get into those things like right now going to karate 3 times a week, which on January 6th. I'll be on that show.
Nice.
Me and Molly will. I'll put that in. I'll throw it to you below. But we did some filming over the summer.
Nice.
And when I was getting a lot of the hate, and people were like, "Damn, you're never gonna be anything," and I was just like, "Wait till they see this shit. Wait till they see this show, man." So I don't even know how much I'm gonna be in there because I'm gonna be mostly backdrop. But like, they got me and Molly's pictures on the thing, and the sense our master is talking about putting Molly on a billboard. So
sweet,
but that's all cool stuff. And all I did, like every time they did some filming, like we went and did this like kid thing, I wore my Bring the Pain shirt, and I just like they were behind me, and the guy goes like stop, and I was like, please, when you air this, do not block out my logo.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't block out my logo. That's all I want. Because there'd be matches I would go up and I would just smash the mats, and I'm like, bring the pain, and then the other guy goes, bring the pain, and next thing you know, we're fighting. It's just crazy things, but it's about just always maintaining that, and that's what I think we do. We maintain this. We compete with ourselves, build lineups like you said earlier, and we watch good wrestling. Like maybe you don't watch a lot of good wrestling now, but I just watched it, and I'll tell you what, that Roman Reigns and McIntyre fight, that was some big meat in that fucking ring, dude. Those dudes are massive. That was a good.
Yeah, they all are so massive now. I mean, little guys can't make it in the wrestling.
Yeah, like Miz just can't get. There's just not a place for him, man. Like, yeah, I guess that real fighting, but dude, yeah, like Orton is barely living, and that's because he's cookie cutter.
Right.
So that's, and when you were talking about Verne Gagne, that was a lot of stuff I heard about was the Chicago wrestling and all that stuff, and that's where Hogan came from, and of course Georgia, and that's where Flair and all those guys came from, and of course Mid South where the Freebirds and
yeah.
And then you had the Night Train Express. Like I remember hearing about the Night Train Express for years. My dad talked about the Legion of Doom, or not the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors.
The Road Warriors, well, they were AWA guys.
Yeah.
That's where they started. Animal and what's his name?
Hawk.
Yes.
Oh, what a rush. Tell him, Hawk. Well, dude, that was the best, like, and the best things. And then, like, when they came, and then we had LOD, and then Demolition and them never really squared off. But even, like, Demolition had cool-ass music, and the Rockers, and the British Bulldogs, Matilda. These were great people, and all that came from there. And that's, and then of course Verne, I would just see Verne in interviews.
Yes.
And I think David LaGreca said he was like pretty much one of the best commentators to ever have as well.
Yeah, he might have done more commentating after, but he was the owner. He owned the whole AWA, and so he employed all those guys, Mean Gene Okerman and Bernie Carbo. That was the guy, Bernie Carbo. He was the president of the AWA, and I can remember they were talking something. He changed some ruling, and the belt didn't go, and but they had these guys, and they were always there.
That is
always.
That's like you hear about the the stabbing of whatever his face down in Puerto Rico. His name's slipping my mind right now. That guy was in a locker room of people. He gets stabbed, dies. And then you have like the stories about Snuka. Like I was listening to somebody's podcast recently, and he was talking. I think it was Jericho's podcast, and he was like, yo, or he was like, the guy, I live right down the street from that hotel that Snuka did that stuff in the mid '80s in, and he's like, what? Yeah, and it's crazy that like you get those stories, and the fanny packs back then, and how everybody said that they had their drugs in it. And then you think back now, because as a kid, you're like, I mean, you were a little older than me, so you could probably be like, well, that guy's coked out. But then me, I was like, whoa, look at him. He's freaking nuts. And we didn't know what was going on. Like, it just, it provided that. And I think that does a lot. And then, your hockey background, that's why like you scream local sports so much, whereas like I've always just been like NFL, Rams, and NBA until, like I said, I met Chrissy, and then I got into the local sports. But you've done that, and I didn't do any concerts forever in my life. I did wrestling events forever in my life, and then I was like, wait a minute, maybe I gotta go see Kiss in concert or something like, or Rob Zombie in concert. Like, maybe I gotta go do that. I gotta go see these bands because they might not see them again, and then it's such a different atmosphere. And with WWE, the way they don't come to Erie every year. Sometimes now we don't get that. So again, it comes back to the local. But like the pitch you brought up, the pictures about your daughter, and the journey that you've taken with her, and all the pictures you put up, and everything you went from there. That was like you said, it was fulfilling to watch. It was like you were being there, and those are the pictures you want to watch because you don't know. Like we had Kayla McBride, who's in the WNBA, come from here, you know, just recently, and she's homegrown here, just like the same way James Conner is homegrown here. You don't know who's going to be that, but it's always cool to watch those players at that lake. Like I brought up McDavid, to watch them, to see them, and just to be like, what did he just do on that ice? And see those spin moves and see him take over a game and translate it to the next level and just know. And then you hear people are like, oh, screw Connor McDavid. And I was like, you know what? That's what you guys were saying about Sidney Crosby. That's what you guys always said about Gretzky. That's what you said about Messier. That's what you said about Lemieux. That's what you said about Madonna. I mean, there was a stretch where Mike Madonna was like freaking God.
Yeah, when I wasn't watching hockey anymore because he was drafted by the North Stars, and then they took the North Stars down to Dallas.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, well, fuck hockey. God damn it. How could they take the NHL out of the greatest state for hockey and put it down in one of the worst states for hockey, Texas? Oh, like I told you, 10 years at least I didn't watch hockey.
Yeah. And I didn't watch baseball. I was huge into baseball cards, all the way up I mean, we started getting our pitch, we had Piazza, Dodgers, that is. We had Piazza come out Rookie of the Year. We had Mondesi, Rookie of the Year. We had this like string, and then that's when we had Hideo Nomo, and we're like, yeah, like with things were clicking, and they're like, yo, strike out. And I'm like, well, screw this shit. And the NBA pulls that too, right around that time frame, right after that or right before that. Like you just like you lose interest, and a lot of people lost the interest in the NBA, and some of it's still resented to this day. Baseball brought themselves back with the home run derby, but now I think it's kind of put into itself. But even that was off its year. But like hockey's always just stayed the same. It's more line changes, but there's always like that dominant player for that dominant timeline. For some reason in hockey can just dominate. Jonathan Quick with those years with the championships for the Kings.
Oof. He was amazing.
We had a great team. Brown, Kopitar, we had Doughty, we have all this team, and now all those guys are way older now, and it's like it just doesn't mesh like it. And it was the same thing you brought up. When you bring up the Stars, man, they freaking knifed me in the heart when they took Rob Blake. I was like, like Rob Blake, that was like my guy back in the day. At that time, he was probably one of the best players on any of the teams. But like when you went hockey, and I did, I got into huge. I was a big.
That's my guy right there, Neil Broughton.
Broughton. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I went through a thing where I loved Ziggy Palfy, and then I found out Ziggy Palfy has a May 5th birthday.
That's beautiful, right?
It is. It was like when I found earlier when I dressed up as Macho Man, and I found that other Macho Man that I'm friends with now.
Yeah.
His name is Dan. He has the same birthday as me, and we just looked at each other, and I'm like, we both do Macho Man. We both love Macho Man, and we're both born on May 5th.
It's the Taurus thing.
It's something about it, man. It's great. So, I mean, any last thoughts? Anything out there? I see you're getting a nice walk through your sports memorabilia.
My basement is spectacular when it comes to. I just was gonna. You were talking about baseball cards, and I see if you can see right there. That's all where I do a lot of my sorting of the cards. There's all Twins cards, and my basement is just full of some of the best memorabilia you'll ever see.
Yeah, you have a lot of the older stuff too, like that Hart. That's a Hart goalie stick back there. Is that what that is?
Those are Hart skis. I almost died on those skis right there.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I was in ski camp. I don't know if you can see. We're kind of squished in there. I was in a ski camp in Oregon when I was in high school, and I was following along one of my guys, and we were just bombing it down the hill full go, and it kind of went up and then leveled out, and then it went down again, and there was this big patch of rocks because it was summer, and I had to have been going 40, 50 miles an hour. Just got down to my side, tried to slow down. Thank God I hit the rocks with both my skis. I flew about 10 feet. I laid there for about 2 minutes before I got up, went, do I dare even move? And I got up, I walked away from it. Not a damn thing wrong with me except my skis are fried.
Yeah, and you probably don't have any video of that because nobody had phones back then.
Oh, there's no video.
Yeah, there's no video, so you can't just watch it. Like I always think about the day I broke my leg when I made that cut and I tore the ACL and everything. I was like, someone might have been recording it, but it would have been nice to see me just go,
yeah,
do my juke move and just fall. And just that's I have some of that stuff like around. I have a box of like hockey cards in there. Hockey cards don't seem to be worth a lot, but like what I find a lot is I'll find like a 1990 score pack. So then next thing
they're like open.
Yeah, I mean, you still get like Lemieux and Yager. Like I have a Yager rookie. I don't know if it's worth anything because
Yager rookie's worth cash.
See, I've got some stuff, but then now I have it all back upstairs in the attic where I just changed it around where I want to do something like what you did there. But that's all work in progress. I've been doing all like, a lot of the stuff like this with this, Chrissy, did all that. And then of course I painted that too, but so we did all this together and pretty much scrapbooked this room. And that's just more priority than that. But I have a box of baseball cards over there I haven't done yet that I'm gonna open up, and then I got some WCW cards.
Nice.
So I'm gonna go open those too. I'm gonna just do a live boxing of those, and just do like little fun things because nothing beats old school like baseball names and like old school names. Period. You get Oil Can Boyd. Like
Oil Can Boyd.
Where do you find that? And then you get like the best faces. So I just look at these guys and you're like, what did he just do to make that face? And why did they allow that on that baseball card? Like it's the craziest things you could do. But it also comes back to it. You'll remember those players growing up to them, hearing those names, and then it just brings out that kid in you every time. Keeps us all healthy.
Yep, this is my kid place.
That's what it is. It's really cool. And this is what I'm trying to make my kid place.
I love it.
And Chris is trying there and gaming and stuff like that. So I think we've probably been going at this, probably getting yelled at by the wives soon.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end this part of that. We'll talk for a few minutes after that. But hey, man, you got Twitter information you want to give out, or if you do anything like that, feel free to spin it right now. If you got
people want to follow me, I mean, I just do a local, a Kickman 10 or a Kickman 10 on Twitter, and just my Facebook. But it's I don't put out too much content anymore. I like to more comment than put out the content right now. But that could always change with maybe Dr. Roto doing something on his own here shortly. I told him that if he needs a hockey guy, I'm his man.
Yep. And that's another guy I got to hook up with real soon too, other than being on a phone like what we've done. Bring him in and just bring it in, just have a good talk, going towards like, that part of the season, or maybe when the Dynasty League is all done and everybody's all, done, no more games to play, maybe we'll get everybody together and just have like a little fun little thing or something.
That would be fun.
It would
be a lot of fun. Anytime you want to do this, I'm willing to talk. I got, I would love to show off my basement. Just a day like that. I mean, I got stories behind all the stuff in here. It's not,
I bet.
I just didn't put stuff in here. There's stories, there's autographs I've got myself, it just, I got some pretty cool stuff down here.
It is. Well, we'll have to make that just a whole podcast.
That's what I'm saying. That's a whole different show.
That's definitely gonna be something that we'll go into, because I don't have any of that. All my stuff got like my Tatanka axe that I had that night. That my friends would always, like in video games, they would end up grabbing it and hitting each other with it, and eventually somebody hit my brother, and he's a monster, so it broke. So I don't have it anymore. It's just one of those things. And like someone stole my Jerome Bettis rookie, and I had the really good rookie, and someone stole it, and it was $30 rookie season when it came out, and it's gone. Never gonna see it again. So like that's a lot of those stories. But then I have old pictures of like wrestling, and then I have some drawings and stuff that someone gave me, the book of local artists drew some wrestlers. He has a Macho Man on his card, but he doesn't have Macho Man either. But I got like Flair. I'll go post some of the pictures in the Bring the Pain page, and maybe over on the Facebook too. It's really cool how this guy did it and depicted the wrestlers. That's really neat. But that's pretty much it. But like you said, stories. Now I got stories for days with my video games, because I have all those still.
Yep.
A lot of that, but that's kind of what I have. Not too many signatures, but I do got Jeff Hardy. I got Matt Hardy's signature, and on my Macho Man cape, I have like Jeff Jarrett. I have Devon Dudley, and I would have had Bully Ray that night if I didn't get separated, because I turned around after I took a picture with Kurt Angle. I turned around and there was a line. And I'm like, why do I have a line? And I'm like, next thing you know, I'm signing stuff and I'm taking pictures. And I lost my party. And then they go in and I was like, hey, you have to have belt. I was like, I got a belt. It's my Macho Man belt. I was like, I'm with them. And he was like, well, they're already in there, buddy. I'm like, ugh.
Oh.
But whatever. I made somebody's night that night,
Yep. That's awesome.
And that's all that matters.
Yep.
So, all right. Give them an out, and then I'll end it up, and then we'll click it.
Good to be with you today, Heat. And like I said, I look forward to it again.
Oh, yeah, brother. Anytime, Kick, we're going to have that on. Make sure you follow us both at Kickman10 on Twitter. You can follow me at Heat Override with Justin O. But you can find me at Bring the Pain, the number 8, because that's infinity. Oh, yeah. Because we go for ages. Yeah. And have a great night, everybody. And always remember to bring the pain. Oh, yeah.